Hello, nerds. Thank you for watching Generally Nerdy. This is your week in Nerdom Supplemental Edition, and we've got some stuff about Star Wars this week in Supplemental. That's probably what's going to take up most of our time. But there's other really awesome stuff too that didn't really fit anywhere else in the week in Nerdom videos, so it's going right here in the Supplemental. But before we get into all that, intro.
Quiet on the set, rolling.
Hi, I am Bitsy Telek.
Hey, I'm Hale Appleman.
I'm Walter Kane.
I'm Rene Aubergenois. Odo on Deep Space Nine.
Michael Dorn, Lieutenant Commander Worf, Star Trek The Next Generation.
Come and see me and hear me and talk to me and listen to me talk about myself.
Hey man, this is Kevin Smith, often considered generally nerdy, and you are listening to what is often considered generally nerdy.
On Generally Nerdy.
You're listening to
Generally Nerdy.
Generally Nerdy.
Generally nerdy.
Alright, so there's really only one point for the supplemental this week that's not got anything to do with Star Wars, and that has to do with the DC Extended Universe, more specifically, Geoff Johns. So, Geoff Johns, we've been speculating what his new role is going to be now that they've lost their head of, I forget the title. What's the title? Chief Creative Officer... Nope. Where is it? There it is. President of DC-based film production. They lost their guy that was the president of DC-based film production, and now they're getting a new guy, apparently. But we didn't know that until recently, hence why it's in this week's news video, right? This guy, his name is Walter Hamada. He was executive producer on the new It movie on Annabelle Creation. He also wrote the screenplay for 47 Ronin, so he's mediocre at scary movies and mediocre at writing, but he's got Geoff Johns to kind of guide him. Geoff Johns is going to be keeping his title of President and Chief Creative Officer with DC Entertainment, so he still has a lot of say in where the extended universe, aka the movie universe, goes. So hopefully all of this restructuring is going to bring us better DC movies and will translate into eventually getting a Batman movie that's worth a shit. So yeah, that's kind of new updates in the world of kinda sorta movies. But the next one, and this one has nothing to do with the new movie, so it's getting a point all by itself. So, there's been a thing with nerds for a while that the Holy Trilogy of Star Wars, the first trilogy, the one that came out in 77 and so on and so forth, that they're great, but the action is a little lacking, especially in the first movie, very specifically with the lightsaber duel between Obi-Wan Kenobi and Darth Vader, because both actors that were doing it, one of them was very old and the other one was wearing a lot of crap and not very coordinated guy. So that lightsaber duel kind of is lackluster, to put it nicely. There is a channel on the YouTubes called Fix It in Post, and I'll leave a link to their little teaser video in the description. They are re-choreographing that lightsaber duel in such a way that looks like you might be able to, if you're so inclined, and I'm sure somebody out there is going to do it, where you can splice it into the movie so that it makes it's a lot more exciting and probably will extend the length of the movie by a couple minutes, but gives that lightsaber duel the weight it deserves. If you look in the teaser, both Vader and Obi-Wan double fist their lightsabers basically throughout all of the choreography. It is not the full scene. The full scene will be released on their channel, they say, sometime later this year. Really cool stuff. If you like Star Wars, but you, like many others, are kind of disappointed with the lightsaber duel from the first movie, New Hope, if you want to call it that, then again, link is down in the description to this teaser video, and then eventually to the proper scene, which will, from the looks of it, be fantastic. And then we're on to our biggest bit of Star Wars updates for the supplemental. All right, so we've got a whole bunch of rumors. But before we get to the rumors, there's a couple of things I wanted to address. Being as The Last Jedi has been out for about 2 weeks now. 2 weeks, I think. I've seen a lot of people. Everyone has seen it, and I'm sure many people are participating in it. There's been a lot of hate for this movie. And I'm going to address some of the things that I didn't address in the review, and also I think we talked about it last week, and we'll probably talk about it next week if new developments have arisen in the fandom by then as well. So, first, one of the things I heard people complain about is that in The Force Awakens, the First Order was rising in power. They were not all powerful, but they were like the re-embodiment of the Empire. They just hadn't taken over the whole universe. And in The Last Jedi, they apparently have taken over the whole universe. And so a lot of people don't see how the two are cohesive because they can't apparently read. In the crawl at the beginning of the movie, the first paragraph explains that the First Order has taken over the universe and are effectively the new Empire, and now the Republic have been pushed out and are effectively there's resistant pockets that still are the Republic, which leads us into the next thing that people have been bitching about, that they're not rebels, so they shouldn't call themselves rebels and blah blah blah. They never call themselves rebels. The only time anyone who is part of the Resistance calls himself a rebel is Finn at the end when Phasma, and he gets that silly one-liner, but Phasma falls into the fire and maybe dies. Well, we won't know until the next movie. But he calls himself Rebel Scum because she says, "You've always been scum," and now he says Rebel Scum. And that's the one time that somebody in the Republic, which is what they actually refer to themselves, call themselves a rebel. If you hadn't realized it yet, I just saw it again because I was apparently one of the small majority, and I liked the movie. But I saw it again and kind of have been seeing where people apparently weren't paying attention. The rebels, as they are only called rebels by the First Order throughout most of the movie. At any time they're referring to themselves, they refer to themselves as the Republic for the first half of the movie, and then they refer to themselves as Resistance as well. They do not use the word rebel. So there's that. And then DJ. People are complaining that what information did DJ have? I think I even said something in the review where I didn't notice how he came out on top in that deal. But having seen it again, he hears, so they're traveling at light speed or whatever, hyperspeed, back to where the Republic is being shot out of the sky effectively by the First Order. And they're talking, Finn and Rose are talking to Poe, and Poe says what's happening. He tells them they're abandoning ship, they have cloaking, because the First Order is paying attention to the ship, they won't see these little escape pods coming out. So DJ, they cut very specifically to a shot of Benicio del Toro, so that you recognize that he's hearing this information. So he has this information that something is happening that the Republic or the First Order is not going to see. That's the information he sells to save his hide. People are confused as to, well, how did he know what they were doing? How did he know that they were cloaking themselves? How did he know how to find them even if they were cloaked or whatever? He didn't. They changed their cloaking procedures. Hux says something along those lines very specifically, and says we rescanned and he's not lying, or something along those lines. So again, there's not as much cognitive disassociation as you want to believe, unless you're referring to your own cognitive disassociation. So yeah, that's the things, and that's the stuff So now we're going to get into the rumors. So, as a response, this is posted, I think, did I take the note? I didn't take the note. Son of a crap. This was somebody in Reddit, I'm sure. I'm almost 100% positive. This comes from Reddit. There is going to be a book that is kinda sorta the novelization of The Last Jedi, even though that's already out. This is going to be told from a different point of view, and is going to be something along the lines of episode 8.5, in that we're going to get more information about the things that apparently everyone had issues with. This is super duper rumor, so do not take this to heart. This could very well not happen at all, but the apparent leak / rumor has the name of the book being called Mysteries of the Force, which is the working subtitle. And it's actually going to be a comic book, not an actual novel. That will be written by Rian Johnson and then some co-authors that they don't specify. It is from a unknown or unnamed source inside of Disney Lucasfilm. And it's a real big thing, so I'm kind of skimming through it so that we can hit the important bits. I don't see this being a huge deal for Disney because they've already made back more money than they spent on buying Lucasfilms with their Star Wars movies. So there's no reason for them to absolutely have to do this. I don't understand why people are so hateful, but you know, that's how nerds are, I guess. So here's what they hope to accomplish. Again, according to this rumor, here's some of the things they hope to accomplish and will probably happen if this book is a real thing. In a meeting to discuss Poe's discipline after killing basically all... So here's something that I did in my second watching of the movie, kind of took issue, and that's addressed in this point of the rumor, is so Poe is not a stupid person. He realizes that he's going to lose ships, and upon my first viewing of this movie, I didn't necessarily catch that the Republic, or the Resistance, whatever you want to call them, basically was just all of these people that are on the base. That was the extent of it. There were sympathizers throughout the galaxy, but the actual Resistance was made up of only these people in these ships throughout this movie. So, with that bit of knowledge, going into a dogfight like they do at the beginning of this movie, you would think once the coast was clear, he would pull out because they only have so many ships. So if they lose all of their ships, why would you... It just doesn't make any... It doesn't make enough sense to engage if you know you have a very, very limited number of ships and they don't. They have all of the ships in the world. Or in the universe, or in the galaxy, however you want to say it. So yeah, that was an issue that I did take in my second viewing, but it seems that in this book, should it be a real thing, they're going to more head on a deal with his discipline for being such a loose cannon. And it seems that Admiral Holdo is going to initially stand up for Poe, and then Leia is going to explain to her he needs to learn X, Y, and Z, like she does in the movie. So again, why do we need this? So that's going to be, and that's how the Flyboy thing gets put onto Poe. And then the aftermath of the bombing, Admiral Akbar has some sort of communication with far-off commanders of the Resistance. So they're also expanding the Resistance a little bit in this book. First Order strategically do not outright destroy the ship that the Resistance is in. in efforts to draw out additional resistance fleets. It's kind of that old war thing where you leave one man wounded in the middle of the field in hopes that one of his teammates will come out to save him, and then you can snipe the teammates as they come out, leaving the one man to suffer. So that, I guess, also kind of will evade the argument of, well, they're the freaking First Order. Yeah, sure, they're the resistance ship is smaller and therefore faster in a short run, but if you have a lot of weight, we know this from video games, and they seem to be using video game kind of knowledge when they're writing these movies. So they have size, that means they start slower, but they have the ability to maintain speed better, so they should be able to go faster than that resistance ship that they're chasing, instead of, we can only go 10 parsecs a second and they can go 11 parsecs a second, which keeps them just outside of our distance. That just doesn't mesh very well. So this apparently explains that. They're hoping that more ships are going to come to their aid. Sure. Aboard the Radis. This is another really big one. This is probably the biggest one. Whispers of a traitor or spy prompt suspicions and anxiety. Finn is even proposed as a potential mole. So, with his relationship to Poe, that would explain why Admiral Holdo doesn't give Poe any valuable information. Doesn't give anyone any valuable information, because if there is a mole on board, that would make sense. But they'd make no reference to suspecting a mole on board. They just, for reasons that are never referenced, do not give the hothead any valid information. They just let the hothead do hothead things because, again, reasons. So that will probably be the biggest thing. If this book actually happens, that will be the most valuable bit of information, I feel like, where they implant that bit of, well, maybe there's a mole, and maybe it's Finn, so we can't tell Poe anything, because Poe and Finn are kind of lovers. If you watched The Force Awakens, it's really homoerotic. Luke's apparent madness. While aboard Supremacy, DJ sabotages the ship's shields. Say that one 3 times fast. Exploration. Again, we get a little bit more on DJ. Broad revelations about Snoke and his backstory, because everyone has to know where everything comes from. I think it was Patton Oswalt that said we don't need an origin story for everything. When the prequel trilogy came out, he made the joke of, here's Angelina Jolie. You think Angelina Jolie's hot? Well, here's a picture of John Voight's balls. You know, that just doesn't, there's no need for that. Excuse me. Exposition of Luke's time before and on Ahch-To. Some major revelations about the Jedi Master. That's another thing people have been crying about ever since. And then they expand on Leia's Force abilities, because she's not flying. She's in space. She's Force pulling herself to an object. She's not flying. Know your freaking mythology. Within the narrative of the Force and its essence will be likened to that woman, to that of a woman, and a Force user's relationship to it. As to one of the associations with a woman, Sith behold a lover, and the Jedi a mother. So they're going to get even further from the midichlorians, which are still technically freaking canon. And then the last bit, and again, I've really glazed over these. I'll try and find where I got this information and link it down below, because again, I take mediocre notes sometimes. First day with the new tongue, I'm sorry. Explication of Force sensitivities and their distinction from Force users, Force sensitives, I'm sorry, and their distinction from Force users. And then, given everything this source has shared, it wouldn't be crazy to be exacted. So this must be somebody else who has leaked other information I'm sure we've talked about on this show. So very interesting. If this book happens, it could potentially appease a lot of fanboys and appease a lot of people who were really disappointed with this. And it seems that this is probably a very good way to do that, because a lot of the fanboys, I have to use the air quotes when I say that, because they're not necessarily fanboys. I feel like a fanboy would just love it because it's Star Wars. A fanboy is Kevin Smith. That's a fanboy. He loves everything. So these people who are just shouting all this hate are not necessarily fanboys, but they're uber nerds, I guess, is a way to say that. This will appease them, because the people who are hating on this movie are the types that are going to read this comic book. So if this actually happens and Rian Johnson is in charge of it, then again, my hat goes off to you, Rian Johnson, for a brilliant movie, and then subsequently what sounds to be a fantastic comic book that's going to kind of explain yourself better, because everyone deserves a second chance to explain themselves, right? Anyway, that, my fellow nerds, is your supplemental video for this week in Nerddom. And I apparently have swallowed dust because my throat is dry. But before I get that drink of water, I want to remind you guys that the website is generallynerdy.net. You can go there, find me, talk to me, all of the social medias and all of the things, or just directly through the website. We can converse and discuss all of the nerdy bits. The patreon.com/generallynerdy, where you can jump on for just $1 a month. That dollar helps me out immensely, and there are other things you can do, and there's more stuff that you can get should you decide to do those other things on the Patreon. Oh, but that is all of the things, and I want to remind you guys to always remember, if it's generally nerdy, it's probably here.